Hello everyone, I'm Stephen West, this is Philosophize This. We have a long history, she thinks, where people have been moving further and further away from our number one priority being to actually understand reality instead of just some theoretical abstraction that only exists on paper. She thinks there was a shift a couple hundred years ago from geometric expression to algebraic expression. Back in ancient Athens, Plato famously wrote over the doorway that was the entrance to the academy, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here." That's the usual translation you're given as someone trying to learn about philosophy on the internet. But there was an alternative translation to that, and Simone Weil thought this different translation was far more accurate and represented why Plato would ever write that over a doorway to begin with. The alternative translation was, "Let no one enter here who is not a geometer." Simone Weil thought the point Plato was trying to make was not that the academy is some sort of geometry club. Don't come into our clubhouse unless you know what a hexagon is. No, his point was, don't come in here if you're just a sophist. Don't come in here if you're just someone that wants to talk about philosophy as some sort of intellectual game for your amusement. Because we aren't playing games over here in the academy. We are all here because we are united behind the common goal of trying to actually understand reality. And geometry, for several reasons Simone Weil thought, is a very pure way of trying to understand the shapes and the configurations of those shapes that make up the world around you. To study and understand a sphere was to study and understand something that actually exists in reality. And something that exists in reality is always subject to the limitations of the real world. But around the time of Descartes, something changes. There's a shift from expressing things geometrically to expressing things algebraically. All of a sudden, formulas written down on a piece of paper can represent geometric shapes. All of a sudden, we're not talking about real geometric shapes, but abstract theoretical ones. Now, on one hand, this was a great thing for humanity. First of all, we no longer need to have a real sphere existing in reality to be able to study it. More than that, these theoretical spheres can be manipulated in extreme ways. There are no limits to the way a sphere is expressed on paper. A theoretical sphere can be represented by an infinite sum of algebraic points, something that in reality is impossible, but on paper all you really need is a couple of parentheses and 3 dots. In other words, Simone Weil says, we are now using symbols or signs on a piece of paper to represent something that doesn't actually exist in reality. We've traded an understanding of actual reality for an understanding of elaborate theoretical abstractions. And that's fine when you're writing algebra problems for middle schoolers testing their theoretical knowledge. To say John has X number of oranges, there doesn't really need to be a John or oranges in reality for that kind of math to be useful. But just as she thought Plato recognized with the inscription over the doorway to the academy, if you're somebody truly trying to understand reality, you can't exist exclusively in the realm of the abstract. Because this may seem harmless when people are doing algebra, but when this algebraic way of understanding abstract reality starts to infect the rest of academia, you can imagine what happens when you start applying this way of thinking to social systems, where you're not considering real limitations that are built into how people live their lives, or the real people that become oppressed and entrenched into these systems that when they were conceptualized theoretically, these people were just data points. You can understand, even at an individual level, what can happen when people start to favor an abstract, theoretical, ideological understanding of reality over an actual understanding of reality where they're honestly seeking the truth.